Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I have the top of the hour here on my end, so we're going to give it another minute or two before we kick off for today. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's IMPLAN Deminar with IMPLAN Economist Dr. Bjorn Markeson, where he will discuss unlocking the power of custom spending patterns for your IMPLAN analyses. Quick housekeeping item here before I pass the mic off to Dr. Markeson. We ask that if you do have a question related to today's topic, of course, we love to keep these presentations interactive. We ask that you utilize the question box in GoToWebinar. Throughout the presentation, our team will do our best to monitor the question box. If you think you might want to ask a question, just make sure that you have your GoToWebinar control panel open by hitting that orange arrow on the upper left portion of the GoToWebinar pop-out window. At the conclusion of the presentation, if we do not get a chance to answer your question live within the time frame we have allotted, we will be sure to personally follow up with everyone to provide a response. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass the mic off to Bjorn. Take it away.
Hi, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ray, for joining us, and thank you for being interested in learning more about our customized spending patterns in IMPLAN. My name is Bjorn Markeson. Oh, start this over. My name is Bjorn Markeson. I'm the Academic Divisional Director and Economist here at IMPLAN. I'll be your host today. We're going to learn a couple of different things. Three main key points. One is where to find spending pattern customization in IMPLAN. There are a couple of key ways to do that. You can customize them directly in a particular event for one-time use. You can, build out custom spending patterns for industries and institutions for multiple uses. You can also use an event template outside of the software to do this as well. So we're talking about those three approaches. We'll talk and go into the software and look at how to edit these spending patterns, both for industries and institutional spending patterns. And again, we'll show you how to use that both in a particular event as well as building it with the advanced toolbox to use multiple times over multiple different events. And third, we're going to talk about how to apply customized spending patterns in those IMPLAN events, right? So we'll actually go through and show a couple of examples of how this would work. Before we get into those 3 points, though, and even before we get into the why of customizing spending patterns, I want to take a step back and talk a bit about what I mean by a spending pattern. So every industry in an economy needs to purchase goods and services. We call them commodities, and they purchase those from other industries, including its own industry. Within IMPLAN, these are known as intermediate expenditures or intermediate inputs, and that's defined by the BEA as goods and services that are used in the production process of other goods and services and are not sold in final demand markets. So when we're looking at those spending patterns, what we're looking at are the expenditures on intermediate goods in the production of some item. So those intermediate inputs are purchases of non-durable goods and services, such as energy, materials, and purchase services used in the production of other goods and services rather than final consumption. So when we're looking at an industry spending pattern, we're looking at the consumption of goods in the production of other goods and services, and this does not include capital account purchases or labor. So these purchases reflect the backward linkages of an industry to other industries from which it purchases inputs to produce its output. Also, not all intermediate input purchases can be fulfilled locally. I can't necessarily purchase all of the inputs that I need for production within my region of interest, be that a county or a state, or often even the nation as a whole. So IMPLAN has developed regionalized intermediate input spending patterns by taking national level spending patterns, combining those with regional industry level data and trade flow data. These then are regionalized intermediate input spending patterns that reflect industry demand that is sourced locally. And by capturing industry spending patterns on intermediate inputs locally, IMPLAN is able to calculate the indirect effect on business to purchases within a specific geography. So when we're thinking about these spending patterns, we're thinking about it really on two levels. One is as a production function of the industry, what does it take for an industry to produce outputs, but also what share of those are produced within the local economy, within that regional economy. And so to what degree do those dollars cycle back through the local economy? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a spending pattern. We're talking about expenditures on intermediate goods at the industry level. Institutional spending patterns are a little bit different, and we'll get to those further down the line. So the question is, why would you want to customize this? IMPLAN's already done that for in the sense of a regionalization. But there's a couple of reasons you might want to edit those spending patterns as well. One is to incorporate additional information about local industries and institutions. Let's say you're looking at a specific regional industry. You're looking at apple production in upstate New York, and you want to use IMPLAN to do that. You can look at our fruit sector, and you can then take that spending pattern and edit it to match the actual expenditures for that apple orchard, the orchard industry. Now, you're going to need either additional data, often in the form of survey data from those industries, or you're going to need to make assumptions about those spending patterns, those expenditures. So the first thing is you want to incorporate additional information about local industries and institutions. You might also want to use the advanced tools to make it easier to reuse spending patterns. So if you've built out a customized spending pattern and you want to use it for multiple events, you can do that. You can save those spending patterns, you can use them repeatedly, and you can apply them to a number of different analyses. And third, these spending patterns allow for comparative statics across variations of spending patterns. What do I mean by this? So if I am thinking about let's say a buy local program for a college or university, in which they're going to buy food inputs from local sources, right? And I don't know exactly how they're going to source those locally. I can adjust the the local purchase percentage to a couple of different values. I can look at 50%, 75%, 85% local. And I can then use those different spending patterns to run kind of variations on the analysis to see how variations in that local purchase percentage affect the overall impact or the overall contribution in the local economy. So you can do that with any of the spending pattern pieces as well, right? So if we're thinking about what if the production function of an industry changes over time, I can make multiple iterations of that spending pattern to take into account those variations to kind of test those assumptions and get a range of results. So I think what would make the most sense is to just jump into the software and show you the different ways to do this. So let's pull this up. So I'm here at my IMPLAN dashboard. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to do this in a one-off option, right? So it's kind of a basic and an advanced piece. The basic approach is to customize a spending pattern for a specific event that I use one time and don't anticipate using again in the future. So what I'll do is I will actually kind of preset one of these. What I have here is I've got North Carolina as a region. I'm looking at the dollar year of 2024 and the data year of 2022, which is our most current data year. As an aside, our 2023 data is in the final stages of preparation. We're really excited about it. It should be out shortly, so keep an eye on your inbox for notification of when the 2023 data set goes live. So we're still with the 2022 data, and I'm looking at North Carolina as a region. Actually, let me go back and let's actually go and customize this a little bit more. Let's look at the Charlotte MSA. So I want to add this to my impacts. This is the region I'm going to look at. So I'm going to look at a specific region. I'm looking at the Charlotte metropolitan statistical area, and I want to customize a spending pattern here. So I'm going to go to under the event type industry impact analysis detailed. If you haven't used the II detailed option yet, I highly recommend you take a look at it. What this allows you to do is add additional information to that impact analysis. It allows you, if you're a former pro user, to avoid analysis by parts. So I'm going to look at colleges and universities, and I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I can enter in information about employment, compensation, so on and so forth. But what I really want to do here is click spending pattern. And what this does is this pulls up the spending pattern for this industry in this year. And it lists it in a couple of different key pieces of information. The first is looking at the percentage of expenditure on a particular input. So where do colleges and universities spend money in the production of their outputs? And what we're seeing here is that breakdown, right? So small amounts in kind of raw food items, natural gas distribution, water and sewage, higher percentages in more processed food items, so on and so forth, right? So we can look at these percentages. Some of them are very small, some of them are a bit larger, I can also adjust these. So if I want to zero out a particular sector, I can do that. Right. So I'm going to assume we're looking at what if campuses in the a campus in the Charlotte metropolitan statistical area goes dry, no longer has any expenditures on alcoholic beverages. I can do that, right? And that's about 2% of expenditures right now. So 2% of that intermediate goods expenditure is on alcoholic beverages of some sort. So this percentage is no longer 100%. So I can normalize that, which distributes that approximately 2% proportionally to the rest of the expenditures in that production function. I also have an option for local purchase percentage. So what this does is, as its base setting, allows for an adjustment of what percentage of this particular item is purchased locally. So an input is purchased. Yes, they spend, for 2.7% on meat, but only some portion of that is sourced locally. What percentage? Well, that's determined through the calculations of the social accounting matrix. So we have a value in that social accounting matrix that takes into account local production and county to county trade and commodities to estimate that local purchase percentage. You can also adjust that, right? So you can choose a user-defined value as well. We'll get into that as we look at the more advanced option. But this is the first entry into editing a production function. You can go in, edit the production function for a particular industry, use it in this particular region for your analysis and move on, right? So this is a case where you only anticipate using this production function once and moving on. So this is here, it's in the tool, and you can access it using the industry impact analysis detailed option. I'm not going to run the event for this. We'll run another one later. So that's kind of the first basic approach to editing a spending pattern. The other option is we can go and scroll down on this dashboard to advanced tools. You have two options currently in advanced tools. One is spending patterns and the other is industry aggregation. Both are more advanced ways of customizing your model. And these are tools and opportunities for customization that you don't often see in input-output or economic modeling platforms for looking at economic impact analysis, right? So if you're doing economic impact analysis in other platforms, not as straightforward and easy to dig into these particular methods of customization. These are actually much easier to use than was previously available in IMPLAN as well. We've put a lot of work and effort into making these customizations both possible and straightforward. So if we look at the spending patterns option, I get a number of different choices. So what this gives me are a list of existing spending patterns. The top two are base spending patterns. These are what you use to build out a new custom spending pattern. The bottom two are samples that I've built myself. So I can now reuse these and use them again in the future for other applications. They're all saved here. You can save them. You can also delete them or edit them as needed. So if you want to create a new spending pattern, what I can do is choose industry spending pattern, or start with industry. We'll go to institutional next. And I have a number of different options, right? So the first is the industry set. The 546 industries is your standard IMPLAN as it exists industry structure for the US data. The other three options are associated with our international data sets. They're fairly self-explanatory. The 235 industries is Canadian. 46 industries is our most recent international data sets, and 37 industries is our 2015 international data set. I'm going to work off that 546. And then I have options for my aggregation scheme. So if you want to use all 546 industries unaggregated, you can do that here in 546. We also make it easy to use both the 2-digit and 3-digit NAICS aggregation. So you can automatically aggregate those IMPLAN codes up to 2-digit NAICS or 3-digit NAICS. And finally, any customized aggregation schemes that you've built will show up here as well. So you can build custom spending patterns on customized aggregation schemes. So I built a grain schema, which is essentially taking the economy and breaking it into 3 pieces. One is the grain industry, one is support for agriculture, and the third is everything else. So kind of isolating out those pieces. I can then edit this aggregation scheme's production functions as well. I'm going to stick with 546. I'm going to pick the data year of 2022. Again, that 2023 data will be available shortly. And then on specification, this is where I get to edit my spending pattern. So I can choose any of these, and I'm going to pick the same one I was working with before, which is 481. I scroll down here to 481, and I see colleges and universities and professional schools. These are private universities. I'm going to continue, and what this brings up is the same structure that I saw before. Right. So what we're looking at is the production function for a particular industry. Again, those percentages are here. I can adjust those. The local purchase percentage is here as well. So what we're looking at is, what is that local purchase percentage? I can adjust these, right? So if I want to say that the college or university is going to be increasing, or is going to guarantee 75% of fruits and vegetables will be purchased within that local market, that's the one thing I can do, right? I can adjust that local purchase percentage. I can also adjust other pieces of this, right? So if I want to say that we're going to look at where we got, we're going to do more cheese, right? So instead of 3.4%, we know this is going to go up to 5%. Fluid milk will go up to 0.8. Creamery butter will do 0.1, right? So we're making adjustments to this production function and allowing it to float around a little bit. So we're looking at, not 10%, that's not going to be helpful. Let's put this up to 0.4, right? So now we're looking at an industry or a situation where we're looking at increased purchasing of dairy products, but also local purchase of fruits and vegetables. So I can save this. And see, this is a good warning, right? So I've made those adjustments, and before it saves it, it's letting me know that the sum of percentage is greater than 100%, which is a problem, right? You can't spend more than 100% of your intermediate input expenditures. So yes, I would like to normalize this. So this holds those values. So now I can see as I scroll through here, any of the changed values are highlighted in teal, both here with that and the local purchase percentage. So I can save this as example 2. Let's spell it correctly. And I'll save that as example 2. And now I can use this again going forward. And there's a couple of different ways I can do that, right? So I can go, let's go back here. And let's say I am looking at another region. We can look at another region in, well, we can look at, yeah, so we can look at Charlotte again, look at Charlotte MSA. I add this to my impacts. Now, there's two ways that I can bring that spending pattern in. One is industry impact analysis custom. What this is essentially a customized version of industry impact analysis detailed, right? So the difference between detailed and custom is I get my custom spending patterns right here. So I can pull example 2, custom spending pattern 2 right here. And I'm ready to go. I'm ready to run this with that customized spending pattern. And if I load this up, this is going to pull that example 2 spending pattern into the model so I can take a look at that and use it. There we go. And there's that spending pattern. You can see that that local purchase percentage is adjusted and all of the rest of these have been customized as well, which means I can further customize this as it is in the model itself. The other way I can do this is using the custom spending pattern event. So I can choose custom spending pattern and run that as well. The difference here is important, right? If I'm looking at industry impact analysis custom, I'm going to add additional values to, if I enter in an intermediate input value here, but leave the rest blank, it's going to make assumptions and fill in those values and look at an industry impact as a whole. If I just enter the same dollar value in the custom spending pattern piece, it's just going to look at the effect of those intermediate expenditures. So I'm just looking at the effect of those indirect effects on the supply chain. And that allows me to isolate that specific piece of the analysis. I do want to show one more piece. And I want to go back to these spending patterns. So up until now, we've been talking about industry spending patterns, but there's a whole nother set of spending patterns that are available called institutional spending patterns. So when we talk about institutions in IMPLAN, these are sources of final demand, right? So what we're looking at are things or entities that purchase goods as a final product. So I'm going to look at 2022, and now I can go in and look at a number of different options. The first swath of these are household spending patterns, so I can edit spending patterns for households for all 9 different household types. I can go in, I can edit that production function for households 100 to 150,000, so I can choose that. Now, one additional piece that you have here is you can edit that region. So I want to pick, for example, the North Carolina region. And the reason you need to pick that is because we have regionalized spending patterns for household expenditures in the model. So the spending patterns between North Carolina and Washington for households $100 to $150,000 is different. And so when you're editing the spending pattern, you're editing it for a specific state. So you're editing that particular expenditure, the production function. So again, you can go in and edit the spending pattern for households. Why would you want to do that? This is often in the case in with policy assumptions. We're assuming that new individuals are moving to a region, and therefore we would expect to see higher level of expenditures of folks in a particular income group with particular additional data about their purchasing habits. We know that we're that households are moving from one region to another, and they're bringing their spending patterns with their spending habits with them. So we're going to use that. The other options here are final demand pieces for federal government. We have non-defense, defense, and federal government investment. And then we have state and local government, other education, hospitals, investments. So if we want to look at those spending patterns and adjust those for at the federal government level or the state and local government level, we can do that. One thing to keep in mind as I look at this state and local government education, for example, one thing that's different about these particular institutional spending patterns is that they include, I'm going to pick one that I know that I just used earlier, so industries, aggregation, 2022, so federal government defense. What this gives me is that spending pattern for the federal defense industry. We can go through here. One thing you'll notice is down at the bottom, these institutional spending patterns do have payroll on them. So if you're looking through this and wondering why these percentages seem relatively low, it's because we have a 50% expenditure on employment and payroll at the bottom. So again, all of these pieces are adjustable. The other, and then what else we got here? And then there's two more that I generally advise against using. One is capital expenditures, and the other is inventory additions and deletions. So increase and decreases to inventory kind of at an economy-wide scale. Unless you have specific knowledge about why and how you should be adjusting those, I would not do so. So as a whole, what we've done is we've walked through the different ways of editing the production function or spending patterns of both industries and institutions in IMPLAN, how you can do it, why you might want to do it. Again, this is when you have additional information about how or why different industries or households or governmental entities are spending money on inputs or final goods expenditure. One thing that I do want to point out is that you'll have a copy of this video will be sent out, a link to it. You'll receive a follow-up email with that link. Also, our support site is a rich source of information about this type of thing. So if you go to support.implan.com, you go to Getting Started and Advanced Tools. In the Advanced Tools section, we've got custom spending patterns, and it walks you through a lot of the information that we talked about today, probably more. Also, if you go to the Learning Center and webinars, you can choose custom spending patterns in IMPLAN, and that while it does give you a brief overview of what we're talking about today, the related article section also digs into the specific pieces of what we talked about, gets into definitions, how you would use industry and institutional spending patterns, how you categorize effects for institutional spending pattern events, and so on. So again, highly recommend utilizing that support site. Also, your customer success manager, happy to help you with these types of questions as well. And one last thing I did forget to mention earlier, there is a method for importing these adjusted production functions and spending patterns into IMPLAN via the event template. So again, you can find the event template on our support site. Just type it into the search bar, search for event template, and that'll get you there and allow you to basically build a production function or spending pattern outside of IMPLAN and then import it into the software directly. With that, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate your time. Michael, have we had any questions come in?
Yeah, Bjorn, we have a couple of great questions that have come in. The first of which I think I can tackle a bit, is that users have the ability to customize the relative allocation between intermediate input expenditures and value added, right? And the answer to that is absolutely. IMPLAN does give you the ability to customize that relative relationship between intermediate inputs and value added. You can do that either utilizing the industry impact analysis detailed event type on a event by event basis that Bjorn showed us a little bit earlier. But you can also do this for an industry within a region overall, utilizing the customized region menu. So like many things, such as what Bjorn just showed us, there's tons of more information available on those two things from our support site, support.implan.com. And another question that came in was in regards to those percentages that we saw in the industry spending pattern for commodities, and clarifying that that percentage is a total of intermediate input expenditures and not output. And that is absolutely correct, right, Bjorn?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So that's that share of intermediate input expenditures. So it's not taking into account capital expenditures, proprietor earnings, labor income of any type. So it's just those intermediate expenditures, and it's the share of those intermediate expenditures.
Correct. Yeah. So those are not necessarily gross absorption coefficients, right, which would again show you that relationship to total output. Those values can be found in the region details on an industry by industry basis, and dividing those commodity by commodity gross absorption coefficients by the total gross absorption coefficient for an industry would derive those spending pattern percentages, which will by default sum to 100%.
Yep. Great. Anything else, Michael? Let's sum it up.
We had a question just roll in. Is there a way to customize household spending patterns for retirees versus working age households? And the answer to that is yes. So that institutional spending pattern that Bjorn just showed us does now include household specifications. So you can customize how households are allocating their income to be spent on certain commodities. Yep. So Bjorn,
so if you want to go in and pick a household, pick a region, continue, I can then adjust this to match, say, my retirees spending pattern. I'm just going to, let's just delete one so we can have an adjustment. So let's set that to 0. We'll normalize. We can save as, and we can now call this household 30 to 40 retiree. And now I have my retiree spending pattern for retirees with expenditure with household income of between $30,000 and $40,000 a year.
Fantastic. And another question that just rolled in, kind of tangent to what we just talked about, is there a mechanism to export a spending pattern to more easily examine it and/or work with it in a template? And Bjorn, if you want to hop on over to the region screen real quick, I'll show that table I was just talking about. So if we go to the region details for any region, and underneath social accounts, balance sheets, industry balance sheets, and commodity demand, you'll see those gross absorption coefficients that I was referring to a moment ago. So again, these percentages will not align one-to-one with the industry spending patterns that we would see in an event or in that customized spending pattern option. But what we can do is divide each of these gross absorption percentages by commodity. If you scroll down just a little bit on the screen to show that total row at the bottom, if we divide each of those percentages by the total gross absorption percentage, that 40.3 or so percent, that would derive those spending pattern percentages that will sum to 100%.
Yep, and don't just highlight, copy, and paste this thing. Uh, download that as a CSV file, and then you can use, your favorite spreadsheet to edit that.
Okay, so one more question that came in. Would you use the institutional capital spending function in the event of a war or natural disaster that greatly reduces an area's physical capital? Or could you give a potential other example of when you might want to use this? Bjorn, I'll let you answer that. You can.
There aren't a lot of specific reasons why you might want to kind of use that on a regular basis. Let me think. So, yeah. So one way you could think about it is if you're looking at how capital expenditures purchases in all industries change, right? So this capital expenditure function or spending pattern is applied to all industries. So it's just that capital is spent on inputs for all industries. So if you're thinking about how an incentive adjusts those CapEx purchases across all industries due to, say, an incentive or a policy, that might be a reason you would want to use it. Again, you would really want to make sure you know what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it before adjusting those CapEx expenditure patterns. I can follow up with that call as well. I'll pull some examples internally and send that over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bjorn. Another question here. Given potential of tariffs, can we change the household spending pattern to show the potential regional impacts of these tariffs?
So because prices are not directly included in IMPLAN, you need to make an adjustment beforehand, right? So if I go to that household spending pattern, I have to make an assumption of how those tariffs are going to change household spending patterns at that for that particular income group, and make that adjustment off model. Then you can absolutely import and adjust those household expenditure patterns into IMPLAN, have household expenditure pattern variation by tariff, and then run that through the model. But again, you need to make that analysis or assumption of how households are going to react to price changes, both relative between industries and absolutely, before bringing it to IMPLAN. So IMPLAN will help you understand the ripple effects of those changes to those spending patterns, but you need to make the assumptions about how those spending patterns are going to change. So yes, and you just need to bring that data to the model.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Bjorn, and that could also be a case for some sort of scenario analysis where you run the spending pattern with the normal or as it currently exists versus the spending pattern with those changes that you've brought.
Yep. Other questions?
All right, well, we've got a couple of questions here that I think it may be best to follow up on as far as showing examples. So we'll be sure to do that. But outside of that, looks like our questions have grinded to a stop.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time today. If you have questions, feel free to send them into support@implan.com to your customer success manager, or feel free to email me as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks, Bjorn. Bye, everyone.